welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 432, and today's date is April 4th, 2014. And the title of this episode is High Probability of an Event in August While Congress is on Vacation. Now let's just back up here a second and take a look about what's going on here. Now we understand back in August of 2013, Congress took their vacation. They went on break. They didn't come back until after Labor Day. During that time period, we saw something happen. They started hearing chatter of terrorism throughout the Middle East. And they decided to put the country on high alert, to put travel advisories out there, and everything was being shut down, all the embassies throughout the Middle East. And back then I did an episode, which is 126, called Warning Possibility of a False Flag Event in the Next 30 Days. And we saw what happened. We saw the Syrian chemical attack false flag event occur during this period. All the ships were being brought into the Mediterranean. They were ready to go to war during this time period. Now, of course, Congress was not in session. They were taking their break. Let's fast forward to 2014, and here we are in August again. And let me just remind everyone, during that period of time, the president was in Arizona, Phoenix, telling everyone there's a fantastic recovery going on, real estate's rebounding. The Fed was talking about tapering at that time, that they were going to do it in September. And we had the president of France and the Eurozone out there saying it's in a full recovery. Everything looks great, 2 thumbs up. Here we are today, fast forward to 2014, and what is going on now? Well, we have Ukraine's situation where the anti-terrorism forces are battling the southeastern section, and they're using false flags to demonize Russia at this time. We have the Middle East where the Islamic State is creating chaos, which is controlled by the United States government, Israel, and other Arab nations, and the UK. And they are creating a pretty much chaos. They are trying to split the Kurds, the Shiites, and the Sunnis into different sections. And they started the process now by reinforcing the Iraqi military, and the U.S. government wants the Iraqis to split off these different regions and have soldiers in those regions who match that area be the soldiers in those areas. So we can see this happening right now. We also see tensions are rising in the Pacific with China. Japan came out and they named a couple of the islands there. They're not the Senkaku. They're near the Senkaku Islands. They were uninhabited. They decided to come out and say, okay, we're going to name them. China got really pissed about this, saying you can't do this. It's in the China South Sea here. And, of course, the United States is backing China, and they want this provocation. We have sanctions against Russia going on right now, trying to provoke Russia into doing something. We see Yemen, Libya, especially Libya, government is falling. Yemen, tribes are rising up, fighting against the government. Lebanon, the tribes are rising up there. The United States now is shipping thousands of M16 rifles into Lebanon to help the army units fight against the tribes in that country. So we can see all of this is going on. Now, we can't forget about Israel and Gaza. Israel now is in Gaza, fighting in Gaza, destroying infrastructure and killing thousands of women and children. Let's go into the United States here. What's happening here? Well, we have the illegal problem where more and more illegals from Central America are coming across the border. Obama is advertising down there on Univision and other multimedia sites, telling people, yes, you have our permission. Come on up. You will get a job, you will get medical benefits, you'll be housed, you'll be clothed, and you'll get a court date, I don't know, 6 years into the future, but come on up. Disease and all, criminal record, we don't care. We're going to leave the borders wide open, and we have the borders wide open right now. What else are we seeing? Well, all of a sudden, we have this Ebola scare that's running rampant throughout Africa, and it's getting worse. The World Health Organization and the CDC are all out there saying this thing's going to spread fast. There are more and more people getting it, and we should be very concerned about what's going on. And we could see all of this is happening all at once, and now Congress is taking a break, and they won't be back until after Labor Day. Now, we saw the same thing play out back in August, but we have much, much more going on right now. They are pushing the recovery very, very hard right now to convince the American people that we are in an economic recovery. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next 30 days right now if we see some type of major event. I mean, everything is primed, ready to go, and it seems like they might be pushing this. Now, it might move into September, the first week or so, when Congress might, starts filtering back after Labor Day. Everyone takes about a week or so to get all back into Washington. So we might see something occur at that period of time or right in August. And I think the president right now is looking to do something with immigration in August because he knows Congress is out of there. He has a pen, he has a paper, and he is ready to go. So we can see all this is ramping up at this time, and we have to be on the lookout of what is going on. And we can see right now all the indicators are looking at this situation that something is definitely going to happen. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, what we're seeing right now is the Department of Justice right now is going after GM and the subprime auto loans. Now, we understand all the automobile manufacturers are offering subprimes. They're trying to get anyone in with a heartbeat to purchase a car. This is how the spending version of the GDP was pushed up, because they were just giving anyone with a heartbeat a loan. And what we're seeing right now is delinquencies are rising very quickly. Those people who are taking out the loans cannot afford these cars, and they're delinquent on their loans, and a lot of them are defaulting on it also. So we can see right now the Department of Justice sent out a subpoena. GM received it, and it's relating to subprime automobile loan contracts. They're also subpoenaing GM for warranties on underwriting criteria. So we can see all this is starting to fall apart. And if we look across the globe, we see other countries starting to fall apart. We see Portugal, we see Bulgaria, we see France, many countries now, and this is going to be a domino effect. It's all going to occur, and all these countries are going to collapse one by one as we go down the line. And this is why they're trying so hard to create some type of an event. Now, we understand Russia signed the Eurasian Economic Union with Belarus, Kazakhstan, and right now they're looking at creating one type of common currency unit to be used throughout these countries. Right now, they're using a mixed of about 50% of rubles, 40% of the U.S. dollar, and the other 8 to 9% is in euros, and then the rest are just other currencies. And it looks like they're looking for a common currency to use, and believe me, it is not going to be the dollar. Now, we understand that Obamacare is completely not for the people. I mean, there's taxes interwoven into Obamacare. We have penalties on Obamacare. Deductibles are very, very high. They really don't give benefits to the people. And the Affordable Care Act, we're seeing premiums go up. And here's another case where premiums are going up. In Florida, what we're seeing is that the exchange rates are going up by 17.6%. So this Affordable Care Act is really becoming very, very expensive. And you have to remember, their scheme was to have a lot of young people into the system. Those who are graduating high school or graduating college come out and say, you know what, let me just buy that health insurance because it's really cheap, and now I can insure myself. But guess what? Those college graduates and high school graduates are having a very tough time finding a job. About 80% coming out of college cannot find work today. Most of them are living with their parents. A lot of them are getting part-time work, and the last thing on their minds is health insurance. And now, of course, the older population is reaching the age of 55 and older, and they want the health insurance because their health is starting to deteriorate as time goes on, and they're the ones who are purchasing it. Now, the system can't keep up with this, and they're hoping that the younger people were going to cover the older people, but that's not working out. And right now, this is why they need to continually raise the rates, because there's a huge, huge older population that is using Obamacare, and the younger and middle class pretty much not going for it. And we can see Obamacare is not doing what it was supposed to do, and it's completely falling apart and collapsing. Now, let's move on to what's going on in the border. And it looks like there's a leaked intelligence analysis from the Customs and Border Protection reveals that the exact number of illegal immigrants entering and attempting to enter the U.S. from more than 75 different countries. The report is labeled as unclassified for official use only and indicates that the data should be handled as sensitive but unclassified. The report reveals that the apprehension numbers ranging from 2010 through 2014 of July. It shows that most of the human smuggling from Syria and Albania into the U.S. comes through Central America. The report also indicates the routes individuals from North Africa and the Middle East taken to the European Union, either to illegally migrate there or possible stop in their journey to the United States. Among the significant revelations are that individuals from nations currently suffering from the world's largest Ebola outbreak have been caught attempting to sneak across the U.S. border into the interior of the United States. At least 71 individuals from the 3 nations affected by the current Ebola outbreak have either turned themselves in or been caught attempting to illegally enter the U.S. Now, what's very interesting about this, the United States is so concerned about the Ebola outbreak, and they're sending military troops now down into Africa. They have teams down there, and they're leaving the borders wide open. Does this make any sense whatsoever? Of course it doesn't, because they're the ones who are manufacturing all this. They're the ones who are creating all this. And later in this report, I'll get more into what's going on with Ebola. Now, the president right now is taking the next steps in his border action. Now, you have to remember, Congress, again, is on a 5-week recess. They're on vacation. And the president looks like he's going to take some type of executive action during this time period while Congress is completely gone. And this is when he does his dirty work, during the time where there's no one up there and he can just write executive order, and put them forth. And this is also the time period when they can create this special event that is coming. Now, it looks like the sovereign citizen has pretty much topped the threat for domestic terrorism. Islamist extremist and militia patriot groups round out the top 3 threats to communities in the United States. Their focus, the sovereign citizen focus, is not on individuals. Rather, their focus is on governmental dysfunction and abuse of authority. So right now they're classifying sovereign citizens as those people who think the government is dysfunctional and they're abusing their authority. Well, that pretty much is everyone probably listening to this report and many other people, and all those people who come out and say, you know what, I don't think what the government's doing is right, and all of a sudden you can become a domestic terrorist, a sovereign citizen. And then we have to play this out. If you are declared a sovereign citizen or a domestic terrorist because you're questioning the government, that brings us into the NDAA. Anyone who is put and lumped into a domestic terrorist group, the NDA then applies to you, where they can take you and throw you into prison for 1 year without due process. Now, of course, this is against the law of the land, and that's the Constitution, but they don't care about that. Remember, Harry Reid, Obama, and the rest of them saying that the United States is ruled by law. No, I'm sorry, that is completely wrong. The United States is not ruled by law. These are the laws that you make up to rule us. The United States is ruled by the people, telling you if you still have a job. If the people decide, and eventually they will, that these government officials aren't doing everything they possibly can for the people, we have the right to remove them. So this country is not a rule of laws, it's a rule of the people. They are creating laws to control the people, and this is why they keep using this over and over and over. Now, it looks like Japan is going to enforce their sanctions against Russia come August 5th. The Japanese sanctions against Russia, announced last week, may come into effect on Tuesday. The sanctions foresee the freezing assets of people involved in the Crimea annexation and responsible for destabilizing the situation in Ukraine, which, of course, it was really the United States, the EU, destabilizing Ukraine. They had a coup d'etat. They spent $5 billion. They had the government officials all picked out, ready to go. They knew who exactly they were going to put into power, and they put them into power. They overthrew the government, and of course their plan didn't go the way they wanted it. They thought they were going to get the entire country of Ukraine. They were going to put it on the EU, have them join up to NATO, have a Black Sea port, and everything was going to be wonderful, and they were going to extract all their natural resources and bleed the country and put them into debt. Well, they didn't realize that Crimea was going to be voted away and it was going to belong to Russia. They didn't realize that southeastern people were going to say, you know what, we don't want to be a part of this puppet regime, and we're going to have a referendum and vote away and vote ourselves independent from you. And then all of a sudden, they had to say, no, this is enough. The west part of Ukraine is worthless. What are we going to do with this? And of course, Biden and Kerry had their son or friends put on the board of the natural gas oil companies so they can make billions and billions of dollars inside of Ukraine while they bleed the country dry and put them into debt. Who cares about the people? Who cares if they're suffering? Who cares if they're going to freeze over the winter? Who cares if they can't find a job? Who cares if they die in the anti-terrorism campaign? It makes no difference as long as those people, the central bankers, make billions upon billions of dollars. And this is exactly what is going on inside Ukraine. Now, Obama was out there and he was giving an interview, and he was out there saying that he dismissed Russia as a nation that doesn't make anything, and said in an interview with The Economist magazine that the West needs to be pretty firm with China as Beijing pushes to expand its role in the world economy. Right there and then he tells you, and he's telling everyone, that yes, China is going to be a problem. The yuan renminbi is now spreading across the globe. They are becoming an economic powerhouse. They're making bilateral trades with many, many countries. They're setting up clearinghouses, and they need to pretty much watch them. Obama downplayed Moscow's role in the world, dismissing President Vladimir Putin as a leader causing short-term trouble for political gain that will hurt Russia in the long term. Well, actually, it's the opposite way. The United States and Obama are doing everything he says, where he's pretty much causing short-term trouble everywhere, actually long-term trouble in the Mideast, in the Pacific, in Africa, in Ukraine, for political gain. So if we just turn it around, you can see that it really fits Obama and the government officials and the central bankers who are actually doing this. Obama described U.S. tensions with China as manageable. That means they're contained, that if they step out of bounds and try to push their economic currency around the world, the United States will retaliate against China. China is engaged in territorial disputes with its neighbors in the oil-rich South China Sea and frequently skirmishes with the West over intellectual property issues. One thing I will say about China, though, is you also have to be pretty firm with them because they will push as hard as they can until they meet resistance, Obama said. And what he's saying right now is they are spreading their currency around the world. Everyone is de-dollarizing, and he's saying we need to pretty much contain China. We're containing China in Africa, we're containing China in the Pacific, and we're containing Russia in Eastern Europe. And this is the way they're thinking, this is what they know. And you have to understand, if they decide to push the yuan renminbi and the ruble further throughout the world, what's going to happen is what we call war. They need this to cover up the dollar, which is completely collapsing, imploding on itself, and they know this. And this is why they've been pushing so hard to get into Syria. And they want to get into Syria because they have a lot of natural resources. Russia has a lot of contracts, but it is a direct link to Iran, where would love to get into Iran, and if they can put the dollar on these two countries, it would prop up the dollar, because that means other countries would have to use the dollar to buy those resources. And now with the Islamic State, they need to really take control of Libya, Lebanon, and Iraq, because these are completely falling apart, and most of the tribes in these countries are pushing very, very hard to get the private Western central bank governments out of there, which is the puppet governments of these countries. And once they do this, they will no longer use the dollar to trade the natural resources. And this is what the central bankers are very, very worried about. So they feel if they use the Islamic State and they can form some type of an event where the United States needs to invade all these countries and put them back in order, and especially get into Syria and Iran, they could pretty much dominate this whole area by separating and creating this caliphate, which they want to do, which would separate all these nations into Sunni, Shiite, and Kurds, and they would be able to control the situation and keep the oil pumping and keep the dollar in reserves for a longer period of time. And this is their plan, but I don't believe it's going to work. I think it's going to fall apart, because we have to remember who's on the other side of Syria and Iran. That is Russia and China. They will step in and they will start war. And they don't mind this, because they will make money on the war and they will make money after the war. This is the way they think. You need to borrow from the bankers to pay for military operations and to build ships and to build planes. And after the war is done, you got to borrow from the banks again to pretty much rebuild all the infrastructure. Our mission is to make sure that the United States is without a central bank. It is a government who coins the money without any type of interest. We need to get rid of the central bankers throughout the world, and this would be our opportunity when things are collapsing to make the move to try to get rid of all of these central bankers. Now, of course, we're going to do it peacefully. We're going to start off doing it all peacefully, not firing on the government, but saying that we want the government officials to step down and we would like to replace them. And of course, they're not going to go along with this. They're going to say absolutely not, and they are going to pretty much come out in force, and they're going to pretty much try to do whatever they possibly can to stop the movement. I mean, we see it in Ukraine right now. Just take that as what is going on. The people wanted to not be a part of that government, and look what they created. They created an anti-terrorism force to go after those people, and they're bombarding those people, and they'll not stop until they are finished with their mission. Now, it looks like Russia right now is launching massive bombers. They're having a drill. It's on the border of Ukraine. Not all the drills on the border, but some of it is. And they're flexing their muscles, showing that, yes, we are here. They have more than 100 planes and helicopters that are taking part in the maneuvers on Monday through Friday in its central and western districts in Russia. And of course, we might even see the United States or Ukraine say, oh my God, they have mass troop build-up again. They're going to invade, and they will continually play this up. They'll take a couple satellite pictures to show how they're going to be invading and how their troops are there, and they might even play this up even further. Now, it looks like intelligence analysis analysts are out there, and they're calling out Obama, saying, you know what? You're giving us all this crap about MH17, their Google Maps, they're drawn on, there's no real satellite information, and they're out there saying, you know what, either produce the real information or stop talking. Stop talking that you know who it is, who's doing it, who did what, without any evidence. And I completely agree with them. I mean, if Obama and the Obama administration has no evidence whatsoever, there is absolutely no reason for him to speak about who's doing what. The only way you can say who's doing what is with actual evidence. Back it up. And it doesn't seem like they can, because every time they put out a satellite photo, a video, or a recording, it is always debunked, and we show that it is completely fake. And everyone, all the alternative media sites come out, join together, and they prove that this is false, fake, and phony, and it never happened. Right now, the Ukrainian government is preparing a draft of laws that will restrict entry to the country for certain officials and limit public purchases from Russia. The bills will also increase control over entities that have Russian capital. The Ukrainian authorities are also drawing up blacklists against Russian politicians and cultural workers who will be denied entry into Ukraine. The Ukrainian government is also considering measures against Russian banks if it decides that any one of them supports the militias. The National Bank of Ukraine can take on all different type of measures, and it looks like this is continually escalating. Nothing is dying down here. Ukraine is pushing into the southeastern region, bombarding them with hitting schools, hospitals, killing civilians. It doesn't really seem like they care anymore. They just want to capture that entire area. And it seems right now that Ukrainian special forces in Lugansk region decided to surrender, because right now they're not getting the supplies, they're not getting the rations, they're not getting the food, and they're saying, you know what, we're done here, we surrender. And of course the pro-Russian people are saying, listen, we want your weapons, we want what you have. And the surrendering Kiev forces are saying, no, we would like to destroy our weapons. And the pro-Russian people are saying no, and they're talking about it. They're having discussion about what they're going to do, and we'll have to see how that turns out. And most likely they'll probably end up getting all those weapons. Now, Kiev is not giving up. They're going to push really, really hard. Kiev keeps deploying missile launchers, including the SS-21 and multiple rocket system, and they are not stopping. They want to continue the war. They want the southeastern section to fall. You have to remember, they have their orders from the banks, from the IMF, from the U.S. government. Take back Ukraine. Don't stop until you do, and then your next move is to move into Crimea. Now, right now, it looks like the Obama administration has notified Congress of its plans to train and arm Ukrainian National Guards starting in 2015. The Defense Department and State Department have notified Congress of our intent to use $19 million in Global Security Contingency Fund authority to train and equip 4 companies and 1 tactical headquarters of the Ukrainian National Guard as part of their efforts to build their capacity for internal defense. Well, we know what this is all about. They are building up and beefing up Ukrainian armed forces to bring down southeastern and Crimea, and then eventually establish a force in there for when World War III starts with Russia. And this is exactly what's going on, and they are really building up for this. Now, it looks like Israel is continually bombarding Gaza. They're hitting they hit an historic mosque in the northern Gazan city. This mosque stood there since 647 AD. Now, the question I have, they're continually bombarding the infrastructure of Gaza. Non-stop hospitals, schools, mosques, and of all the pictures that we see, because they keep telling us there's weapons hidden under there, the troops are hit. Why don't we see any of these weapons? Now, of course, they say, oh no, we're telling the people to leave. So you're telling the people to leave with their weapons and you're destroying the infrastructure. How does that stop them? It really doesn't. And I compare this to ants. Now, if you have an ant problem in your home, and you decide to destroy, the ant line and the ant hole by crushing it and hitting and pounding on it, it really doesn't destroy the ant home. They dig a little bit further. The nest is very safe underground, and the ants sprout up again. So what they're doing right now is they're destroying the infrastructure. Wouldn't it be better to destroy Hamas and their weapons? But it doesn't seem like they're actually doing that. It doesn't seem, because you know why? Because we haven't seen any evidence of all these weapons that they're talking about, of why they needed to go ahead and destroy a hospital, a school, a mosque. It makes no sense. Now, of course, what's been happening is the mainstream media outlets, if you notice all the pictures they're showing, you do not see pictures of the Hamas military. You don't see any pictures of the weapons. You don't see anything except for Israeli tanks, the missiles being fired from Israel, and stories about how soldiers, got hit in the foot, or soldiers were kidnapped, or one soldier was killed. This is all you've been really hearing and seeing. And of course, the mainstream media has no pictures of anything else, or they would have shown it. They only show you things that they want to show you, and they use the story around it to make you believe that this is actually happening. Now, it looks like Israel has pretty much finished destroying all the tunnels in Gaza. And you have to remember, they've closed the borders, and the borders have been closed, and they've been using these tunnels to bring in supplies back and forth. Not really for weapons. They were there before because they couldn't get out of the country and bring in things that they need. So they needed to dig in tunnels and get supplies in and out. Now it looks like they closed the tunnels down, and what they think they have done is stop them from getting outside of the country. Now a lot of the troops from Israel are starting to retreat right now, but they're continually saying, no, we're still going after Gaza. And you have to remember, off the coast of Gaza is about 122 cubic meters of natural gas and 1.6 billion barrels of oil, and Israel has no claim to this because Hamas was an elected type of government, and they were dealing with Russia, making deals with Russia. And we can see right now they're trying to destroy the infrastructure to try to force the people out of this area so they can't return, they can't rebuild, and this way, if they just leave now, they can have that area. And we'll have to see how far Israel pushes this. Now, it looks like the U.S. is shipping in about 1,000 M16 assault rifles into Lebanon, and of course the tribes are rising up. They have to arm the government. It is getting worse in Lebanon. It is really bad in Libya. A lot more evacuations from other countries are taking place. Yemen, the same thing's happening. The tribes are rising up and pushing the government back. Now, it looks like the Islamic State, which is controlled by the U.S., Israel, UK, and other Arab nations, have a perfect way of funding themselves. They're using the Syrian oil, which they smuggle down into the Kurd area, and they sell it on the black market. And they're making about $3 million a day selling this oil. And you have to remember, one of those ships were off the coast of Texas, and also a lot of these this oil that's being sold on the black market is being sold into the Ukraine, and a Ukrainian oligarch is purchasing it. So we can see right now that oil's going to Ukraine, a shipment was coming to Texas, and of course the UN is saying this is absolutely not allowed. It's against the law. Baghdad is screaming out all oil sales have to go through Baghdad. And of course the United States did back Baghdad and Maliki back in May, back in February of 2014 and January, saying yes, or all oil sales must go through there. And now they're saying they can purchase oil from anywhere in Iraq. Wow, how times have changed. Now it looks like the Ebola attack is pretty much as we know. This is a false flag. They're really building this up. And I've said in my other reports, as they keep playing this up, the numbers are going to be pretty much inflated very, very high. So what are we seeing with the Ebola outbreak? Well, the White House spokeswoman, Marie Harf, was out there talking about Ebola, and it looks like she slipped up on her words where she said it was the Ebola attack, not the Ebola outbreak. And now that is a slip of the tongue there, but it goes to show you that they're eventually going to call this an attack because they are preparing to push that agenda very, very much forward in what is going on here. Now, the Ebola outbreak, they're saying, is moving faster than efforts to control it right now. This is coming from the World Health Organization. Efforts to shift to finding those who have come into contact with victims in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia are very, very difficult, and it is spreading very, very quickly. Another report is out there saying that the World Health officials panic at rapid spread of Ebola, 30,000 possibly exposed from U.S. victim. Nigerian health officials have confirmed that as many as 30,000 people may now have been at risk of contracting Ebola from one American who died after boarding a flight from Liberia to Nigeria. Reports indicate that fears of a global pandemic are now justified due to this incident, as this particular mutation of Ebola appears to have the capacity to cross international borders via air travel. Disease spread pattern indicates Ebola can be airborne. U.S. officials remain insistent that Ebola isn't a significant threat to Americans and that it can only spread through bodily fluids, but what the public isn't being told is that Ebola can be airborne when micro-droplet fluids containing it are suspended in the air, such as when an infected person sneezes or coughs, and it can even be transmitted when someone sweats through clothing onto furniture or sweats through their hands onto a door handle. Now, here are a couple things that a lot of people don't realize about Ebola. It seems like from the patent, which Dabu 7 has pointed out, and there was a huge, about a $7 million grant that was being sent down to Tulane University and other companies that had ties to military down in Africa at this area. And it looks like from this patent, when you read it over and you take a look at it, it looks like Ebola is being weaponized. They're trying to create an airborne version, but the problem is the virus does not live very long outside of the human or animal host. And to create this, they need something that has to stay very, very hot. This is why you see Ebola in Africa. It has to be humid, it has to be hot, and once it hits the United States, air conditioning pretty much, the cool, cold air pretty much kills it pretty darn fast. And it has to be in that hot, muggy, wet type of weather for it to survive. And things about this Ebola is very interesting, is that, they will go to great lengths to create the illusion that this patent is for the creation of a vaccine to protect against Ebola. But you can't create a vaccine for a virus unless it is for that specific virus. It's very simple. You have to create the specific virus in order for the vaccine to work. Now, if there's a different strain, just like in the flu, which is a virus, they can't create a vaccine because there are many, many different strains of the flu virus. And every time they come out with a flu shot during that year, they need to know what strain of the virus is. And of course, they normally miss because they have no ability to know what it is unless they're putting that strain out there. And what's going on right now is that it looks like they've been trying to weaponize Ebola for quite a while. Now, the patent is for a man-made form of Ebola, one that was created by combining several other viruses. The Ebola pandemic that is happening right now in the 4 countries in Africa, 3 of which have never had an outbreak of Ebola before, Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, is very blatantly not acting like Ebola outbreaks usually do. First off, considering the infected numbers that were given in February 2014 at the beginning of this outbreak, and the supposed spread of the virus to 3 other countries, not enough people have died. The Ebola virus works very, very fast. I know that this is a morbid thing to say, but the Ebola virus kills very, very quickly with a high mortality rate. And if the virus was in a large city center, as the media is saying, guess what? A lot more people would have died. The mortality rate would have been much, much higher. And the thing is that if the virus was being spread through aerosol, through sneezing and coughing, the transmission, as the media is reporting right now, everyone on the plane would be completely infected. So right now what we're seeing is they're playing up a lot of this story to scare everyone, and they're pushing it very, very hard. And you always have to look at this. When the government comes out and pushes something very, very hard, and they start doing things very, very quickly, like, oh, let's create an executive order, like if anyone has a cough or a sneeze, we're going to have to quarantine them. If all these things, just like the Malaysian flight They come out very, very quick and hard, push it through the media to try to convince everyone very, very quickly. And you can see they are doing this right now. They are trying to push this to say we're heading into a pandemic. Now, the World Health Organization has released statistics that prove that the media is hyping up the fear porn, and they're continually doing this. And you have to remember this. The Ebola is a virus. How many vaccines have we created that pretty much cures viruses? 0. We've only created vaccines that cure bacteria and not viruses. So right now, we don't have anything like this, and what they're talking about is completely a false flag type of an event going on here. And what the White House is doing right now, the White House right now insists the U.S. government is fully prepared to deal with the current outbreak of Ebola in West Africa, even if it means quarantining sick passengers at airports. We are in the position to ensure that the public health is protected. If U.S. Customs Border Protection officers do recognize an individual who appears to be exhibiting some of the symptoms. Now, how many people coming off a plane, if they see a sneeze, if they see someone breathing or sweating, they're going to take them and quarantine them, and we're going to have these big areas inside the airport, and there'll be quarantine areas, and people will be put into these areas not really having any type of Ebola real symptoms. And we can see this this will be completely out of hand as time goes on. Now, of course, they're out there pushing that the U.S. missionary workers who contracted Ebola while fighting the deadly virus in Liberia were treated with this vaccine, with this experimental serum, and it saved their lives. So you can see how they're pushing this now. Now, if they say, yes, it worked, now we have a vaccine to cure a virus, and now we need to vaccinate everyone in the U.S. and in the world. The question is, what's actually in this vaccine? And really, is it really curing anything, or is this just some type of hype to actually infect the people with Ebola, or to use it for some other reason? This thing seems like it's moving along too quickly. There are too many things that don't make sense, and they're pushing it very, very hard. Now, it looks like 600 retailers were hit with some type of malware attack, and it's just perfect timing because they're trying to pass CISA right now, or CISPA. There's two laws. They're pretty much the same thing. One's written by Dianne Feinstein, the other one written by Mike Rogers, but they're pretty much the same exact law. And it seems like every time they're trying to pass a bill, all of a sudden retail's data's being stolen because they want all the companies to share their data with the government, all your private information, and we're seeing this happen right now. And it seems like there's just this new malware that's hitting all of these retailers all at the same time. Now, there is a hacker out there, and Ruben Santa Marta, he's out there saying that he can pretty much hack into a passenger jet and pretty much disrupt the satellite communications and change course of planes and do whatever he wants. Through the onboard Wi-Fi signal and or the in-flight entertainment, he can go through those systems, hack into the plane, and change certain things with satellite information. And this is good to know because if we see a plane off course or something happening, we can say this plane might be controlled by governmental forces where they hacked into it, remote controlling it into a position where they want it to go, or changing things, and this is definitely something to look out for. Now, like I said, this is the month of August where Congress is pretty much on break. They're taking a recess. Obama has ruled the land here where normally and during this time, or moving into September, we see some type of an event to occur, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next 30 days, and it seems like it's a high probability that something will happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.